like to introduce our friend, our travel buddy, the person responsible for making this awesome survey happen. This is Dr. Ngoc Phan. Take it away.
Alright. Mahalo, thank you for coming. I'm really excited today to be in this space and be able to share the results of the 2019 Native Hawaiian survey. We have many members of the research team in here, and this project would not be possible without Hawaiians themselves and putting trust in our team and developing a team and keeping us honest the whole way through. And so we're going to share with you what we did, how we did it, and then you're going to meet the key people that were in it. And then you will also get to hear from around 1,000 Hawaiians living in Hawaii. What does it mean to be Hawaiian, and what do they think is important, and what is sacred, and some attitudes about what is really important to them right now. Okay, so this is hopefully, so I'm so excited to just be here actually. So we'll start. All right, so I am Dr. Ngoc Phan. I am a professor at Hawaii Pacific University. I'm a political scientist, and this is the research team, and this is Dr. Lynette Cruz, La Kea, Dietrich, and Catherine Jara. We also have Leilani, David, and we actually have another research assistant. But these are some of the key people that have been involved in the project. Okay, so today we're going to go over who conducted the study, why was the survey conducted, how did we do it, and what did we find, and then we're going to talk a little bit about data and how data can be both a weapon but also a tool. So data can be a tool, especially when it magnifies and looks at the way different people think about who they are and what they care about. And so I was motivated to do this project because I am a data scientist by training, and I moved to Hawaii, and I really wanted to understand Native Hawaiian politics. And usually in my field, what we do is we just pull down a data set, whether it's on African Americans or Latinos or white Americans, and we download the file and we open up and we get all these answers to like what people think about, do they vote, do they participate. However, when I came to Hawaii, I was looking for that and I didn't find it. And then I asked myself, well, why is that? And then I just asked myself, then maybe I can figure this out. Maybe I can go ask Hawaiians, how they think about themselves and what they care about. Because that is the foundation, and I also wanted, for my own personal journey, to understand the people who live here currently, right? Because I'm not originally from here, and so I wanted to really understand the place in which I was operating. Okay, so let's move forward. So once again, I'm a professor at Hawaii Pacific University, down the street. I got a PhD from Rice University in political science in 2012, and I'm an expert in American politics, survey research, behavioral economics, and race and ethnicity. And I have over 15 years of experience working with survey research. So whether I was developing research questions, analyzing survey questions, or fielding surveys, I've worked a lot with surveys, and so I felt that given this tool set, and given that I felt that there was a need to understand Hawaiian political attitudes, how Hawaiians think about themselves, I wanted to apply these tools and skills. Okay, so I started with, I did the typical academic thing. I looked for the data, I looked at previous literature, but I knew that I could not do this project unless I actually not only knew some Hawaiians, but actively engaged with the Hawaiian community, activists and scholars, right? It's not as if I can just come in and be like, let me tell you something. Actually, there's already a lot of knowledge here, and so what I need to do as a non-Hawaiian academic was to actually be vulnerable, go in, be curious, just sit around, right? Lynette told me, just sit around, don't say anything, just absorb the knowledge, come to things. And so what happened is, she joined, but that will be a journey. I will share you a little bit of that. I was lucky enough to have Hawaiian research assistants. I first just recruited them to come to our school, but eventually they were in my classes or they were my research assistants. And then eventually they found other people to come. So then we built like a really cohesive research team. And the students and Lynette have been essential in this research project. So, okay. So a couple things I want to talk about are the values behind the survey, right? So you always ask yourself, somebody has this survey, why did they do it, what do they want, and what are they going to hopefully contribute to our community, okay? So I wanted to examine Hawaiian identity. I'm not Hawaiian, I am a transplant, right? I came here and I was like, this is really complex, I don't know, but I want to know. And so I took skills that I had and I tried to figure out, you know, what's going on? Why is it that we see Hawaiians in certain places in Hawaii, and why do we see them in why are they fighting for certain things? Why is the community talking about certain things, or why is there a debate about certain things? And so I wanted to examine this. I wanted to design this with Hawaiians, right? Not just like, oh, I got these questions, here, please do it, right? It was really community-oriented. I also know that Native Hawaiians have been subjected to a lot of research, and some of that research is actually quite harmful, right? People call it data fatigue, right? We don't really want to hear a lot more research about things that our community may not be very proud of, or health disparities, because it's like, now what? You know? So that's why I really wanted to say, as a social scientist, as a non-Hawaiian social scientist, where do I think we should examine? And I really wanted to start with the fundamental question is, why don't we ask Hawaiians what it means to be Hawaiian and what they care about? Right? This is before any TMT big recent things happened. This was a research project that I first wanted to understand as soon as I got here. Okay? And I also want to think deeply about indigenous data sovereignty, right? So as a non-Hawaiian coming into the Hawaiian community, I have to stay up late at night and think really long and hard about what that means, right? What is my responsibility? Who gets access to the data? What are we going to do with the data? Could the data be harmful, right? And so these are things that really motivate how I thought about designing the study and how I incorporated the feedback from key people. Okay, so recruitment. We recruited, in order to get 1,000 Hawaiians, you have to probably ask about 4,000 Hawaiians. And so we did a lot of in-person recruiting, which means we went to where people are. We went into the community, right? We didn't just hang around Oahu and just stay there. We traveled broadly, okay? We went to different classes. If there was a connection, if someone would let us in, we would go. Okay, so we were fortunate enough to go to Maile Community College. We had a presentation there. We also had to use social media, right? So hopefully when people took the survey, we encouraged them, if it spoke to them, the language of our team was, if the survey speaks to you, please share it with others. Okay? And then on top of social media, Facebook, Twitter, the usuals, we decided that if we got one person to answer, we would rely on them, if they wanted to share 3 names of others who they thought we should reach out to. And so we do this because we know that there is not, the Hawaiian community is actually less than 300,000, right, across the world. And we know that within Hawaii, Hawaiians make up about 20% of the population. And so it'd be very difficult for us to just randomly walk around, even in Hawaii, to run into a Hawaiian person, right? And so therefore, because the community is hard to reach, the community is also small, we wanted to leverage that opportunity, because when it is also small, that means everyone kind of knows each other. So if you can build trust at one person, then you can move on and get more people to answer your survey, okay? And so that was through emails and phone calls, okay? And then we have a website in which we always told people, go to our website, find out more about us, and we'll answer any questions you have about who we are, what we want to do. And so we're always very open. when we were talking in the community. Okay? And we also went to community events because you just have to be around. Okay, so that was the goal, but the goal of doing all these things is also in context of what's happening politically and what's going on at the time. So we collected data for 6 months. We collected data from August 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2019. Right? So for 6 months, the research team has been thinking about where do we go, how do we recruit, how do we get more people to fill out the survey. And so, but on top of this, so we started data collection on August 1st. We know that key events that are very important in the Hawaiian community happened in July. So the survey wasn't about the events that were happening in July. We had been working, getting approval, getting buy-in, testing questions far in advance. I would almost argue February 2019 is actually when we, I had a lunch with Lynette and Ulu, and they were like, "Who are you? What are you going to do?" And I said, "This is what I want to do. You want to come do it with me?" And from that point, it was not easy because I think Lynette told me, I don't know, maybe, "Who are you? What do you know about Hawaii? Right? What do you know about Hawaiians?" And I said, "This is what I know, and I want to know more, and I'm going to keep working." And so I didn't really know if she would buy in, but I planted the seed. So we kept meeting and we kept working together. We also have, one could argue the things that were going on from July 2019 even till now, right? Perhaps there's a movement, perhaps there's solidarity, perhaps Hawaiian identity is doing something, feeling something, right? And so we're so lucky that our data gathering actually overlaps with these exact moments. We also wanted to know, we could not just stay on the island we live on. We had to go out to our neighboring islands, right? Because Honolulu has about 900,000 people. The whole state of Hawaii has about 1.3 million people. And if you just stay on Oahu and you just stay in Metro Honolulu, you're missing out on key voices, which make fundamentally different, right? Because not all Hawaiians live in the same environment. And so therefore, we wanted to make sure that our team went out to those places if we could, okay? We also wanted to go to people where they were, right? And we knew that we just had to try. We had to try to do this, and our goal was 1,000. We got a little bit over that, and so we share some more. So here's a timeline of where we went. We started on the Big Island in August, okay? We went there 2 times. In September, we headed to Maui for a couple days. Then in October and November, we focused on Oahu. In December, we were fortunate enough to get some money to go to Kauai, and then we also finished up in Oahu. We went to multiple events at the palace itself. We went to the Union March. We went to fundraisers and events, monomatic events. We also went to the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement Conference and the market. So we wanted to make sure that everybody knew that our team was available. When we were at these sites, we wanted to make sure that everyone actually interacted with us. And so we would make sure that we went into, people just trying to enjoy dancing. Like, "Oh, what are you doing? Would you like to fill out the survey? And we'd really like to hear about what it means to be Hawaiian and what's important to you." And so I think one of the things that's really effective is that when people see you multiple times, right, you can build a little, maybe the first time they have a positive interaction with our research team, and then they're like, "Okay, I don't know." And then, they go home a week later, someone posted on Facebook, right, and you're like, "That's interesting." And then maybe someone else, says, "Hey, do this," and endorses us. And so that's how I think we were actually able to accomplish 1,000 Hawaiians, because I just think a survey sent out is not effective, right? And it may actually not even be effective, but be quite harmful, right? Because we want to be really mindful of the time of our respondents, right? So, okay, what else? Okay, so we had in-person and online interactions, so you could take the survey person, we had little clipboards, you fill out the survey, and we would come back and we'd pick it up from you. Or you can take our little information card, go online, and then you can click on it and you can do it in your own time, right? So most of our respondents actually did go online. We also had our website, our rack cards. Another thing we did when we developed the survey was we made sure to talk about who was funding the survey. And so we were very upfront with the community that when we first started, we had received a small grant from HPU to collect data, and that wasn't enough money, but by the end, in December, we had a second grant from HPU, and so we collectively only had about $5,400 to do this incredible data collection, right? $5,400, and our research team traveled to 4 islands. We stayed in hotels, sometimes we stayed at people's houses, we rented cars, we fed people, right? We fed ourselves. And so this is just an incredible sort of, I think, testament to that somebody and our team, right? People in the community really believed in our surveys. And so people were willing to like lend a hand, right? People were willing to not, we had, in every island we traveled to, we had like a special person on the ground traveling in our rental car with us to go find Hawaiians. And I think that's a very unique thing that happens, right? It wasn't just this thing that we sent out online or a stranger called you at your house, right? I'm interested in Hawaiians. And you're like, I know who you are, click. Right? I think it's very different, and I think it was meaningful for the community when we showed up and they're like, who's doing this survey? And then the research team would just point at me. And I'd be like, I'm here to answer any questions you have. Right? I think the personal connection is also key. Okay? We also, yes, and when we had personal connections, then people had questions for us, and then we were able to answer them. Right? And we were always very honest that our intention was not to talk about politics. Our intention was to ask the community what it means to be Hawaiian, and then say, when we get this data, we're going to share it with you. So whatever you say will be posted in your words, right? Whatever we do, we will share. So you'll know the question order. You'll know how people responded to questions like, what does it mean to be Hawaiian? How do you express your Hawaiian identity? What is sacred? Where is it sacred? Right? If you spelled it wrong, we're going to leave it that way, right? And I think that's a testament to saying we respect your knowledge, and we think that the importance of this project is also Hawaiians want to know how other Hawaiians think, right? So I'm almost like I'm like in the background because I'm hopefully providing something useful, and the usefulness I think is why we're able to achieve this like miraculous number. Okay. How can it help the community? We started with the idea that oftentimes there are political surveys or interest groups that like to talk that they understand what Hawaiians want. And so we know that a lot of the data when it relates to politics and public policy is based on registered Hawaiian voters. And we know that Hawaiians have low levels of voter registration. And so if you're talking about Hawaiians who vote and register, you're talking about a very small segment of the Hawaiian population that actually lives in Hawaii, right? And so our goal is like, we're not gonna even ask about voting. We're not gonna ask about politics. We're just going to assume that if you have Hawaiian ancestry and you're 18 and over, we wanna know what you said. We wanna know what you think, and we think you have something to say, okay? And we wanted to make sure that we didn't do any harm to the community, right? This is something we don't take lightly. All the questions are carefully worded. We wanted to protect the identity of the people who responded, you know, because in some places you can probably pinpoint, you know, who in Waianae has a PhD who's, you know, over 70 years old, right? It's really important to also protect the respondents, okay? And so we always answer why. So hopefully through this, you know, one of the things I leave you with is we wanted to make sure that this was useful for the community, right? And we were transparent in our process. Okay, so what happened? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, very painful recruiting process. In the beginning, it was tough. It was August. We were going to the beach. We, you know, harassed some uncles fishing in the dark. They were like trying to fill out the survey, and it was just like, we're like, this is going to take forever. However, that slowly changed. As people did the survey, they liked it. And and they told us where else to go to find people who they thought would want to fill out the survey, right? And then people started to share it, and I think that was really important in that process. Hawaii is also a small place, right? While it is dispersed, it is a small place, and we knew within the community was so socially connected that we could probably find someone to tell somebody something, and someone else is like, I heard that too. So hopefully, it caught on a lot of traction. And then when people, did the survey, they shared it, and then we wanted to make sure that when people did it, that they're like, oh, we see you again, and hopefully as they talk to us and we answer questions, they trust us more. Okay, so recruiting, 6 months. So this is our field team, Law and what happened? Turn it back. There it is. Okay, so 6 months of recruiting. This is insane. While my students and Lynette and I were both also teaching in the fall semester, right? So, Law and Catherine, here we are in Hawaii, here we are, posing, but this survey is enabled by people, right? And so the team believed in the project, so they did it. We also have people who are not featured here, right? But they are also contributors to this. What else? We went to go find people, be where they are. We went to churches. These are 3 aunties we met outside the Hilo Hawaiian. They run classes, and so we're like, please fill out our survey, and they sat there and they did, right? And this is us on the Big Island. So we are going to where people are, right? We wanted to make sure that we were accessible and we showed our face, okay? We also recruited beyond Oahu, right? Southwest, opened up inter-island travel, and so we took advantage of that. But I think it's really important because everything normal, a lot of things happen in Honolulu, and so there's a lot of people and voices on the neighboring islands, right, that maybe don't get as much attention, and their voices and their concerns are just as valid. Okay? There is Auntie Nani. Here's recruiting. There's Lynette at a farmer's market, right? Recruiting. This is us recruiting at the convention that happens every year. And so we wanted to just make sure that people saw us around, right? They saw us around, and they can always ask us questions. And we also updated them, like, hey, we saw you 3 weeks ago, and we had 300 people. I don't know what happened, but we're at 500 now, right? And so people who did the survey then got invested in making sure that it succeeded because it was exciting. Because we're like, it's never been done before. I think we're going to do it. Okay? So recruiting. So here is Auntie Claire. She was very fierce, and she told us, in this process that I am not Native Hawaiian. And she was like, I'm not going to do your survey. But she was still there with us. She said people in Maui think differently. She said she thought differently, and she was like, "That's not me." And I said, "Well, what are you then? What are you? How do we get these voices?" And so Lynette said to her, "Well, if you don't identify as Native Hawaiian in this survey, tell us that, and we'll share that with the rest of the world. We'll share it with other people who assign this name to the community, right? Because oftentimes Native Hawaiian is put on the community for political reasons, okay? So, what did we do? What did we accomplish? We had around 800 online and 200 in person. So 200 in-person surveys. All this data was entered by 4 research assistants. So, the research assistants, some of them got to go to the field, other of them got to read all the delicious things you wrote, right? But it's an incredible amount of work. And some people's handwritings are a little bit more colorful than others, right? And so we worked really hard to make sure that whatever you put would be shared with the community, okay? And a great thing is, once we figured out that when we traveled out of Oahu and we told Hawaiians not living in Oahu that people in Oahu would talk for them, then they were really excited. And so I think it's also important to know that there is diversity and experience within the Hawaiian community. And one of the goals of the survey is to actually try to capture that. Right? It's not a monolithic group. There's complexity. People have different experiences. People care about different things. Okay? And so our financial disclosure, this is just an overview. We got $5,400 and what we spent with it. But most of this is volunteer labor. Because it would take an incredible amount to get 1,000 respondents. Okay, so one thing I want to remind everybody is this survey is not intended to be a random sample of Hawaiians that then we can make generalizations about. That's not the goal of the survey. The goal of the survey is to go in the community and ask people, right, what it means to be Hawaiian. We're not interested in generalizing. We're not going to say, from our data, we can't say, this is how Hawaiians think. The data is intended to say, of the 1,000 Hawaiians we spoke to, this is what they said, okay? Which is a really key, something I really want to stress to people, is that while we did get incredible amounts of responses, it's not so that we can predict. We can't say, you know, this is how Hawaiians are. Like, that's not the goal. That's not the intention, okay? And so the population is not easy to access, and so we just wanted to make sure that this is the first step. Maybe one day we can have these great large studies that generalize among the Hawaiian population, and then we can say, wow, you know, this is what we find on average for Hawaiians. But this wasn't the intention. We wanted to do something super ambitious by just seeing if it was possible to get hit that 1,000 number. Okay? Okay, so it's the largest survey to date on Hawaiian identity. While there have been other surveys, this one is specifically about what it means to be Hawaiian. Okay, and their concerns. We had a total of 1,023. There was 191 in person, 832 online. And then in order, I know that people are very concerned that, how did you check if someone was Hawaiian? So we asked the question after consent, right? Are you 18 and over? Do you reside in Hawaii? And do you have Hawaiian ancestry? And so we took the broadest definition. And so we were hoping that when people responded, they actually responded truthfully. Okay? So here is a map of the coverage of our survey. And so I want you to focus on the top is where we got respondents and the number of people who responded. And the bottom is the 2013 and 2017 zip code data by the American Community Survey on where Hawaiians live. And so what we wanted to do, right, is just show you that we got pockets and people from all over the place, right? It's not supposed to be representative, but you know, we have really good coverage in Waianae, probably because we went there like 4 or 5 times, right? And also one of the key people was living there, right? And we did pretty well in the Big Island in some parts because we spent a lot of time in Hilo. We spent a lot of time, you know, on the ground there with their two weekends, okay? And so I have more detailed maps, island by island, so you can actually pinpoint how many people responded. So please go online and look at that. So let's get to some of the questions. Okay? So right after we want to know if you're 18 or over and if you have Hawaiian ancestry, we then ask you, do you identify with one or more of these groups? And so big N, small n, Kanaka Maile, Hawaiian American, Native Hawaiian, Hawaiian National American. And what you see is just at the onset, is that people could pick all the boxes, and they can also pick other. But we do see that there is, you know, some people pick others and not others. Some people, so the most popular one that was picked, 62% picked Native Hawaiian, big N, big H, okay? The least picked category was American. 127 picked, you know, so about 12% picked American, and then there's Hawaiian American, and 127, that was about 14% of the people who responded, right? And we also have right after Native Hawaiian, we have Hawaiian, is a very popular category, along with Kanaka Maile, right? So we just from the onset, anything else, we can see that when people are given the chance to identify the groups that they want, that one could say are associated with the whole Hawaiian identity, there are differences. Okay? So the next question we ask is, where can you trace your family's ancestry? And so this is another, good question to tap into whether we actually have Hawaiian respondents. Okay? And so we see that there's a nice distribution. Distribution just says that we have people from all over. They can trace their ancestry all over. Okay? We were even lucky enough to get about 24% of the respondents actually said they can trace their ancestry to Molokai. Right? We have Oahu is once again the largest island that people trace their ancestry. But once again, I think the value in this is not actually the numbers. It just says that there's so much variety. Right? I think the variety is often not talked about. Okay, so on top of these questions that you check off, we were really interested in making sure that we had questions where we could tap into people's knowledge and really understand how they saw the world, right? Because you can look at survey questions and think, what are they getting at? Well, you can also ask people and see what they think. So we have a series of open-ended questions, and question 5 is, in your opinion, what does being Hawaiian mean to you? So if you go on the website right now under the results, we have nearly 32 pages of tiny font, right, of how people responded to this. Some people responded with everything. Some people wrote 4 paragraphs, 4 complete paragraphs on this, right? And I think the key here is people have ideas about this. And it's very meaningful for me just to be able to glimpse into that knowledge, right? Because oftentimes, if you can live here and not actually understand the complexity of that. So this is open-ended. You can read, and the great part is we told our respondents, you do the survey, whatever you say is going to be put up there. So if you did the survey, please go find yourself and then see what other people said. So right after we asked you what does being Hawaiian mean, we asked you how you express your identity, right? And this is also a great question, and you see multiple varieties. A lot of people talked about, aloha, kapu aloha. Other people talked about how being Hawaiian is about the way you treat others, right? It's about protecting land, showing respect for elders, for sites, okay? And then we asked questions to also ground not only what does it mean to be Hawaiian and how do you express that, but then an equally important question is, what are the 3 most important things that you think the Hawaiian community is facing today? Right? So we did this, and we didn't give people boxes. We wanted whatever they thought was important. Okay? And I think we were so lucky, it was almost like serendipitous that this question was there while key events were happening within the Hawaiian community. Right? I think this gives us a lot of richness. So, and I also know that some people didn't like this question because they're like, there's more than 3. It's not that we wanted to reduce it to 3. We just wanted for, so that we could figure out if there was any pattern, right? If people narrowed it down to 3. So the intention wasn't to limit, there's only 3 problems. Okay, so when I did this project, I wanted to understand the role of Hawaiian language policies on Hawaiian identity. So from other research, we know that bilingual education in the United States, right, whether students are able to learn in Spanish or not, and English, or is it full immersion, that makes them think differently about themselves. And so when I came here and I started looking up the laws here, I know that the Hawaiian language was banned in government and in school. And then it was put back in. And so I thought to myself, this must have an impact on how Hawaiians think about themselves, right? To grow up having access to language or not having access to language. And so we asked the question, on potentially the impact of this language policy on identity by asking, thinking back to elementary, middle, or high school where you offered Hawaiian language courses. And so what we see is it's pretty evenly split. 382 said yes, 427 said no. And then some people said I don't. So, but this is really interesting because if we looked at the way in which people check those boxes, right? Are you Hawaiian? Are you Kanaka Maile? Are you American? Are you Hawaiian American? Perhaps this indicates that there's a connection between what kind of languages you actually had access to when you were, in elementary, middle school, high school. Right? So right now we're fortunate with the policies is that you can go into full Hawaiian immersion. So the kids now are fundamentally living a different life, right, when it comes to the Hawaiian language than students who were denied it because it was banned. Okay? So in question 9, we asked, do you consider Hawaii occupied by the United States? Right, so the great part about not having other people pay for your survey is that you can put whatever questions you want. And so our survey isn't paid for by the state, it's not paid for by the federal government, and so we thought that this question was quite timely. And we thought that this question was very important. And so what we see over here is 81%, over 660 people responded that yes, Hawaii is occupied. Right? This is pretty cool. It's pretty cool to get this, just to see the answer. Right? I just wanted to know where the community kind of sits on this issue. Okay? If we took funding from other sources, we could not ask this question. Right? Because perhaps some organizations, they get their funding by the state government, right? And their charter is to achieve a different goal. But we wanted to just understand identity, and perhaps if somebody says yes to this, they think differently about what it means to be Hawaiian. Okay? After that, we asked the question many people are interested in, what is your support, right? Do you support the building of the 30-meter telescope on Mauna Kea? Right? Because we didn't take funding from anybody, we can also ask this question. And so what we see here is that 719, 88% said no. It looks very similar to the question on do you consider Hawaii occupied? Right? You can see some sort of pattern here. Okay? Another important thing is in the question wording, I just want those survey nerds who are out there to think. A lot of the questions that we asked about support for Mauna Kea and TNT were loaded with, do you support science? Do you support jobs? And yes. Here we're only asking if you support TNT. We really thought that some questions that are out there in the community, right, are quite misleading. Because yeah, I can love science, right, and I can also not want something, right? This question is not about science. It's just, do you support this policy or this development program or not? Okay. I have pictures of Lynette because these are some questions that she single-handedly, birthed for me. And so I put her picture there. So working on this project, I'm the data person. I had to persuade Lynette to buy into this project. And so one of the things she sort of pushed me to think about is, I go to all these, she said to me, I go to these meetings and policymakers and developers, they'll sit there and they'll talk about, yeah, we understand that things are sacred, but how do you measure it? How can you prove? How can you measure what is sacred? And so she told me this, and I said, I can just ask people. Because we can measure this. We can measure if people, where they think is sacred, what they think is sacred, and why they think it's sacred. Right? So, are there places in Hawaii that you consider sacred? And 97.8% said yes. So hopefully, when next time Lynette goes to a meeting with a developer or a policymaker, Lynette can say, well, there is this study and they asked Hawaiians whether or not there are places in Hawaii they can be considered to what they want. Right? The next question is also Lynette on the board. How important is it to you that sacred places are protected and accessible? Right? And so we didn't know how people were going to answer the first part of, are there places in Hawaii that you consider sacred? And so then we asked the follow-up, are there places that is important to you that sacred places are protected and accessible? And here we find extremely important is at the top and not important at all at the bottom. However, we see that most respondents, over 90%, say that it's extremely important or very important. So here is more evidence among the Hawaiians we asked, right, that there are places that are sacred and that these places should be protected and be accessible. Okay? We have another question. Then we had an open-ended question, right? It made sense to us that we're going to ask people a series of questions about what is sacred. See if they can list places that they consider it sacred, right? And I think this is just really good. Now we have from respondents themselves, not what we think is sacred, not what Lynette thinks is sacred, but what they think is sacred, right? And there are really rich texts here too. Some people say it's literally from sea to the top of the mountain, right? I'm like, okay, there's one. Some people actually listed specific places. And so you can see also, again, really rich text and diversity in how Hawaiians answered this question. Okay? So that was our sacred question. So the next series of questions is, there's a flag for the Aboriginal Indigenous population in Canada. And so these questions, question 14, I curtailed because I wanted to see if these questions that they developed in Canada could work well to helping us understand Hawaiians, right? Because perhaps there may be some overlap. So, question 14A. I have spent time trying to find out more about Hawaiian history, traditions, and culture. And so this goes from strongly agree to strongly disagree. And once again, we see that overwhelmingly, people have spent time researching Hawaiian history, culture, and tradition. Okay? The next question. I'm active in Hawaiian organizations and social and cultural events. So the first one was, do I spend time learning and doing, thinking about my culture? This one is do I take part in actual activities with other Hawaiians? And so we see that, these numbers are not as high as the first one, but we see over 72% say that they're active in Hawaiian organizations, they strongly agree, or they agree. Right? So we're starting to see this profile of people who responded to our survey. They think places are sacred, they can list them, right? They think they should be accessible and protected, and then they also spend time thinking, being involved in organizations. Okay, 14C, I feel good about my Hawaiian identity. And so you see strongly agree, all the way to strongly disagree, and once again, strongly agree and agree, we find that almost 91% of the people who responded say that they feel good about the Hawaiian identity. Then I have a deep sense of belonging to my Hawaiian group. And you see the same pattern where the majority of respondents, nearly 85% strongly agree or agree that they have a deep sense of belonging. So people feel good about being Hawaiian, and they have a sense of belonging. And then we ask the question, I have a deep sense of belonging to America. Okay? And here we find that we're not finding the pattern that people strongly agree or agree with this. We actually find that about 55% disagree or strongly disagree with this. And so what we're starting to find is overwhelmingly the respondents don't have a deep sense of belonging to America. Okay? Then we had questions on where did you go to high school, because that's the most important question we asked living in Hawaii. And we also said, what zip code are you currently living in? Okay. Those zip codes then allowed us to make those, these really pretty maps of where people answered and where they were living. So then we asked questions, do you live on the Hawaiian homeland? if they reaffirm that they're Hawaiian first. Because I saw that a lot too, where, you know, we say, if you're multi-ethnic, you know, list them, and then some people said, I am Hawaiian first, and then they listed all the other things. And so I would really encourage people to look at the data for themselves, right? This is not a survey where we want to hide anything or not let the community have access to it, because the voices and the knowledge come from the community. Therefore, it's really important that it's accessible to the community. Okay? Then this is our age group. So we have really nice distribution. So we have people from different age groups. So we have people all over the place, which I think is good. So it wasn't just, you know, young folks who, you know, they say the digital natives. We had plenty of people over 55 customers. Okay, we even got 29 over 75. Right, so I think this is important because maybe there's differences in how you see yourself based on your age. Okay, then how do you describe yourself? So we're talking about constructs of gender identity. So here we have our sample is 66% female. So we try to recruit more males to the survey, but you know, we have an all-female research team, so maybe this made it a little bit harder. We also had some funny stories where some people told us, yeah, my wife answered for me, so I'm okay, you know, like just ask her, it's okay, right? And so I think it was, so while we would have liked to have more male respondents, right, that's not what we have. And so we wanted to be clear in sharing that with the community also. Okay. Education level. What is your highest level of education? I would like to argue we have highly educated Hawaiians responding to this survey. And so what we see is we have 30% have some college but no degree. Associate's degree, we have about 12%. 20% have bachelor's degree, and then here's the really exciting one. We have nearly 14% have graduate degrees. And so what we also know is that our sample is not only highly female skewed, it's also highly educated skewed, right? But these are realities that people need to share. And so I want people to remember that we're not trying to say this survey will talk for all Hawaiians, because there are data. The American Community Survey tells us the average demographics of Hawaiian population in Hawaii. My survey and this survey, right, different people, they're different people, they're different subsets. Perhaps certain communities, it really resonated with them that the survey could be important or media or useful. Okay. So we also asked if you're currently employed, and most people are employed part-time or full-time. Do you have children? Most people have children in our survey. And what is your religious affiliation? So people just listed this one so you can read, right? So people, it went from spiritual to, all of them, anything. And then the last question we asked is, all things considered, how satisfied are you with your life as a whole these days? And so we find that many were actually dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. So we had about 45% say they were dissatisfied. We had 22% that said they're very dissatisfied. And so what this leads us to think about is, we know that people identify, right, with other Hawaiians as Hawaiian. They are thinking about themselves in very complex ways, right? Most people say that Hawaii is occupied. They know that things here are sacred, and then we have this question. So I think it really it's very interesting what these results may mean. I'm not going to go into that, right? We're just showing you today what we found. So we're not going to go into the details about what this means. We wanted to make sure that people read for themselves, what we did and what we found. And then we had the last question was, is there anything else that you would like to share with us about being Hawaiian or this survey? And these are also up for the community to read. So, there's comments that are directed specifically at me. There are comments that are more about why people answered question 25. Someone in the survey said, I'm actually really satisfied right now because I'm really proud of what's going on in my community. Right? And so I think we have so many open-ended open-ended questions on purpose. Because we want to make sure that people can tell us in their own words what is important, what is sacred, what does it mean to be Hawaiian, and how to express it. And if there's anything else they really want to tell us, right? Because I think the survey itself enshrines the values of the people who are working on the survey. And we really wanted transparency, we wanted openness, and we wanted this project to be accessible to the community. And so when you want something to be accessible to the community, then you're going to have to listen to what they say. You're going to have to let them tell you. And I think that's a really important, I think that's why this survey is actually pretty special, is that it engages with people in ways that I think some people actually found surprising. Okay, so before we conclude, I want to end with, data is a weapon and a tool, right? So data itself is a tool to gather information. What we do with that data and how we think about that data can then have like huge policy consequences, okay? How you collect the data and what you do with it matters. I also want to express that, look closer when people say they talk to Hawaiians, right? On a survey or any study that involves Hawaiians. Who did they ask? How do they go about doing it? Who's funding their study, right? I think some people are confused at our survey. They think it's a different survey, and I'm like, no, our survey is, a very specific survey. It doesn't ask any political questions. It didn't ask you if you voted. So that's someone else's survey. So that we want to make sure that people know what we did, what we asked, the order, and how people responded. Okay. So the survey goals were to hear from the community, ask and share. Our intention is to increase Hawaiian voices of representation in decision making, right? And a lot of those open-ended questions are the things that we actually have to dig deeper into to figure out what the community, right, or people in the community want. Where do we go next? What keeps them up at night, right? What is the hope that they have for the community? Okay, and my own personal goal is to increase the number of Hawaiians themselves that take part in data science. So I encourage anybody who's interested, to think about who gathers and conducts surveys, who funds it, what's the purpose. Can we use data in a way that contributes to the society, not just to society, but to contributes to the community, right? Because the community is very diverse, and the community has different things that they care about, and oftentimes we gotta go ask, we gotta go meet people, we gotta be connected, right? Have boots on the ground. Okay, and so we're gonna start doing more analysis. So the academic stuff will come out later, but the goal of this was that we told the community that the community report will be out first before any academic papers, because the goal was to make sure that this is a valuable resource for the community, right? And so no academic papers. Those were on the back burner. This was the number one thing that we wanted to share first. And so please share. Thank you for listening, and I'm open to any questions or comments. And here is the research team again. They're in this room, and so I wish I could turn the camera the other way and put them in. Any questions? I have additional maps, but any questions from the audience? Yeah, questions.
Has the HPU, either other staff or administration, seen any of this data yet?
They're busy turning all our classes online right now. The HPU community has not seen it. It goes first to the community at large. Yes.
Anytime in the future, are you going to reopen up this survey to maybe add 1,000 to the 1,000 we already got?
I don't know about that. We are working on hopefully getting the random sample, right? Because what happens here is one of the limitations of this study is people say, well, it's not randomized, so we're not really sure that what you say really represents the Hawaiian community. If you're talking about like survey research methodology and standards, okay? And I would argue argue, yeah, that wasn't the intention of that study, right? But we're hoping to find resources or collaboration where we can get the random sample that then we can say, this is the standard and how we do this, and this is the data on Hawaiians, and then this is what the community collectively, thinks about a topic or issue. Yes?
What are you doing next?
What are we doing next? We're gonna work on this data. You are working on this data. The research assistants are on the team. That's what you're doing next.
Are we still
We have a project where we're trying to build, after the election, the 2020 election, there's a collaborative multi-racial post-election survey. And so in this sample, they want to achieve 1,000 Hawaiians living in all, not just here, but also on the continent. And so our research team is hopefully going to be able to go find your family members and your ohana who had to leave Hawaii. And we want to actually go into those spaces and ask them, like, what do you care about? What are the things that you most want? Maybe ask some of the same questions about, occupation, sacred. And so that's still in the works, but, if anybody wants to help us with that or say, you must go to Las Vegas, like, I want to go to Las Vegas. I mean, I would love, we call that the ninth island, and I hope that we go to places where, because, Hawaiians are all over, right? And there's being able to stay here is fundamentally, your experience is different than if you live on the continent. Yes, other questions? Lynette, do you have questions?
No. You should ask me if I have comments, but no.
Do you have comments?
I think you were kind to people who were not always kind in terms of comments made.
Oh.
And that's good. Don't take any of that stuff personally, but I was a little disappointed because when we were traveling neighbor islands, and you guys already know this, the reality is, and I told everybody that if you do not weigh in from Maui or Kauai, we will. And for many of them, it sort of like triggered this responsibility thing, right? So they felt kuleana to say something, but that's the truth. The truth is, Oahu will always weigh in for everybody. So any policy that's made here, like by the governor, is going to reflect what we say, not what they say. And so, I thought it was foolish for them not to weigh in. It would cost them 15 minutes, not much.
I think that a project this big and a project this grand, like a lot of people are like, I don't know about it. And I think the community is wise to be skeptical of people who are trying to collect knowledge and survey Hawaiians. Because I think that historically the data has been used against the community. And so for me, even if I have encountered some friction, I think that just means the way in which I approach it has to be better. And so my commitment to the community and the way in which I engage has to be different than how I would engage with different communities. And so when you do something important, it's going to be hard. And I think that's something that the research team and I deeply sort of think. And the results now, right, whatever it is, whatever you get from it, even if you didn't do the survey, do read it, because these are the voices of people who had something to say, and they really wanted to share it. And so at the end of the day, it's not about me or I could care less as long as like it exists now, and now we can share it, and we can say, you know what, we don't like those questions. Well, let me know which other questions you think. What is it? Or if people serve Hawaiian organizations and Hawaiian activists, if you look at some of the questions and you find them useful, I'm happy to share with you. You want to do a survey? Perhaps we can talk about how do we develop a survey just for your organization, right? Or when you go for funding, how do you take this data set and pitch it as this is where the community wants to invest resources. This is where the community cares about. So I want this to be used, right? And I think that's why we work so hard, because we think that it has so much power to inform the process. Because data is also now used to figure out if your project is worthy of being funded, So for many of our Hawaiian organizations that struggle to get funding, right, it would be, if you look at some of the questions, you say, Hawaiians think that homelessness is a big issue, or the fact that, our ohana cannot live here. Like, that's really powerful, right? And the data is there for you to use. Yes, do you have a question?
I'm just curious, as a researcher, once your data is, I guess, officially published, I don't know if it's academic publishing or how all of that works, but as a researcher, do you have any control over how that data is used once it's pulled out and, by other researchers or by politicians, or do you have any rights?
So right now the data is, I have control of the data, and I want to develop a way in which the community has input into how the data is used, right? And so there are other communities. So there's indigenous data sovereignty is a big issue in other communities. And so like for tribal communities, you actually have to go to the elders and get IRB approval. So if some people are watching and they see this and they're like, I'm really uncomfortable with her having access to this data and even like having it, I want the community to come up with those guidelines so that we can then follow those principles. Because right now, right, you can have this very dangerous situation where people will collect data and use it however they want. But if people want to work with this data set, then, because we're such a small team, like I will look at it, I will ask Lynette, I will ask other people who I'm familiar and say, what is it? Is this a trusted person, right? And also like, is this the type of research that we want being done on this? Because that's my reality to the community, is that like I'm actually figuring this out, and I would like for the community to come together if they can to literally restrict researchers, because I think that's a really important like consequence of data. Because I've been very upfront. Data is a tool, but it can be weaponized, and so you can see that someone could take some of the responses, right, and do whatever they want with it. I hope that that's not the intention. But what I can do at an individual level with this data is, because I govern it, we can have rules and norms that say when you work on this data set, you must adhere to these code of ethics, right? And then so we know that if someone somehow, right, gets the data and they do harm, that they broke the ethics. So I think it's also monitoring within our own community, right? And researchers have that ethical, like they have. Yeah.
Does the university have partial ownership because you're an employee and because they sponsored it?
So this is being recorded, so I don't know the answer to that. But other faculty members, when they go do research, it's not the universities, because it's a grant to enable my research. And so my understanding is that people go to the archives, they do like performances. The school doesn't.
So there have been some criticisms that you did the study.
Yes.
And our response has been consistently, better you than me. And the reason for that is because I would be accused of having some bias. But I know for a fact that you were just asking your questions, and it didn't really matter what people said. It only mattered if they responded honestly or whatever. And so I think from our point of view, it's better. I'm glad you did it.
I don't want the narrative to be, it's good that we had a non-Hawaiian do this so that people will believe it.
It already is. I'm just raising that. It's already come to us multiple times.
That's why I want to train an army of, students or anybody who's interested in survey research, interested in this, so that it can come from the community more directly, right? So I want it so that one day, like, all of my collaborators or like my students are the ones that are doing the survey. Because I think there's a need. Because when people fight with data, we have to respond with data. Because that's the current privileged currency in which we make decisions. And so while I understand that for many people it is one, grossly unfair, right? And also very colonial and Western, buy into surveys. I want to also just preface that with that there are people who actively don't engage Hawaiians in the research project, right? They don't I live in the community. I had this is what I do. I am responsible to the people that I know also, right? On top of what I want to do for the scholarship, and so there are people that are not as careful. Their beliefs and their ethics are not grounded in the way that we try to build this project, and so but data is not going away. Data is constantly used to tell the community, any community, right, what they care about, where we should spend money, what is most important. And so if we can find data that counters that narrative or allows the community to exist in a diverse way, right, that actually makes it so that there's more, I think that can empower the community to say, we're really complex and we have ideas, and not only ideas, but we potentially have solutions. So yes, data is the new oil, right? Unfortunately. Other questions? Any questions on Facebook? Lennon, anybody saying? She's like, there's 2 people watching. Other questions? Comments? I don't know. Are we done? We have some cool maps. So we made some really beautiful maps where we actually put the terrain in, and so you can see where the mountain formations are, and you can see where the people live and how many people responded. And so this is the Big Island. So this side is who actually answered our survey, and this side is where Hawaiians live according to the American Community Survey. So we all, another thing is we are constantly going to update the website so that things are more accessible to more people, right? And so while watching this can take a long time and you don't want to read through everything, these maps also help you understand, oh, am I interested? How many people responded from Hawaii, right? Were anybody living in my community responding? So this is respondents from, I think we're missing something. We're missing something here, but you can see the grass here. This is Oahu, so this is where we live. And so you can see we had a strong Hawaiian buy-in, right? And so these graphs hopefully give you context to how many people actually responded. And here is Kauai and Nihao, right? We're getting ready for Nihao. And so I really encourage the community to look at the open-ended questions. We're not going to analyze that and tell you how to think about it. We want you to think about it. And yeah. Anything else? Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
For